Welcome to the second episode of White Story. On March 12, 1996, after a long 70-hour train ride, the 38-year-old White finally returned to Beijing, armed with his release certificate and bullets. Before going to prison, White had a house in Beijing where he lived with his wife and twins. After his wife divorced him, his younger brother's family moved in. When he first returned to Beijing, White stayed with his mother and stepfather in their apartment in the Shijingshan district. A month later, he rented a small place on his own. His whole family was happy to have him back, and White finally felt the warmth he had missed for so long. A few days later, White went to the police station to apply for an ID. He presented his release certificate, but the police gave him a hard time and said it would take at least 6 months. White felt that the police were mistreating him and questioned the police. This led to an argument, and the police angrily told him that his ID would take 2 years to process. Later, the police told him that his paperwork was incomplete. Each time White brought new documents, the police still claimed they were insufficient. After many attempts, White felt that the police were discriminating against him because he used to be a criminal. White's mother suggested that he give the police a gift, but White angrily said, "What can I give? I have trouble even putting food on the table. They are deliberately making it hard for me to live." Without an ID card, White couldn't get a job and began to resent the police. He then spent over 100 RMB, about $12, to buy some razors and set up a stall to sell them on several well-known streets in Beijing. But his goods were confiscated, and he was fined several times by urban management officials, adding to White's frustration. In China, the Urban Management Enforcement Department is a unique entity whose primary role is to maintain the city's image. However, they often resort to harsh measures when dealing with the lower classes, leading to considerable controversy and a bad reputation in Chinese society. While in prison, White promised himself that if he got a job and was treated with respect upon his release, he would live a normal life. If not, he would take revenge on society. Now he has a goal of getting 3 million RMB and plans to do it through robbery. The first step in the plan was to obtain a weapon. On the 19th day after his return to Beijing, the evening of March 31st, 1996, White went to the Gaojing thermal power plant in Shijingshan district. He had visited the area several times before and knew that the guard at the plant gate was armed. He waited in the shadows and, at 9:40 p.m., attacked the guard with an iron rod when the guard wasn't paying attention. The guard fell unconscious, and White took an unloaded Type 56 semi-automatic rifle and ran away. He then buried the rifle on a nearby hill and went home to sleep. When the police arrived and found the guard injured and his rifle missing, they took the case very seriously, even though they didn't find many clues at the scene. White was not satisfied with a rifle. He wanted a handgun as well. A week later, on April 7, 1996, he went to the area near the Beijing Military District Armored Forces Command. He waited for several hours in a small grove across from the main gate, watching the guards. At 11:15 p.m., White used the rifle he had stolen earlier to shoot and wound a guard. The wounded guard ran back to the duty room, and since White didn't get what he wanted, he left immediately. Several soldiers rushed out, but they didn't find where White was hiding. After escaping, White flagged down an unlicensed rental van on the road. When the driver asked what was in the bag, he claimed it was wood planks for remodeling. They agreed on a price, and the driver agreed to take him to the 337 bus terminal. By this time, however, a nearby police patrol car had received information about the shooting and stopped the van for questioning. Thinking the police had found him, White quickly got out of the van and fired at the officers as they approached, wounding 4 of the 6 officers. Some officers returned fire, but White managed to escape unharmed. He later ran into a nearby wooded area, hid the gun, and even took a nap. At daybreak, he pretended to go for a morning jog and returned home. Even when the police stopped him for questioning, they didn't suspect him, Based on their investigation of the crime scene, the police determined that the bullets used to shoot the guard and the officers were both 7.62 millimeter, model 7581. Ballistic analysis concluded that the gun used in the shootings matched the Type 56 semi-automatic rifle that had gone missing from the guard on March 31st. Footprints of the suspect were also found at the scene, leading to the conclusion that the suspect acted alone, was between 30 and 40 years old, in excellent physical condition, and approximately 1.8 meters tall. The van driver also provided information to the police, stating that the suspect had a Beijing accent and was headed to the 337 bus terminal, which happens to be near White's mother's house. Acting on this tip, the police conducted door-to-door searches of residents within a 5-kilometer radius of the bus terminal. During the investigation, police met with White at his mother's residence, but found nothing unusual and took only routine notes. White did not give up on his goal of obtaining a handgun. This time, he set his sights on the Beijing military shooting range. After scouting the area, he noticed that the guards wore holsters and magazine pouches. On April 21, 1996, White retrieved the rifle he had hidden in a small grove, then hid in a cornfield near the range, and waited for several hours. At about 1:30 a.m., he shot and killed a guard from a distance of 10 meters. White rushed to grab the guard's holster and magazine pouch, but soon discovered they were empty. Disappointed and angry, he threw the holster and pouch into the grass as he fled. After running for hours, White hid the rifle in a nearby mountain again and returned home. In the 1990s, many guards carried empty holsters, but White was unaware of this. An innocent guard became the third victim to lose his life. In the 3 weeks from March 31st to April 22nd, there were 3 shootings in Beijing, all of which targeted sentries. The bullets used in all 3 cases had the same code, 7581. The police formed a special task force to investigate. Many police believed that the suspect was likely a retired military man, motivated by dissatisfaction with society and revenge against the military. Around the same time, several violent bank robberies involving firearms occurred in China. As a result, a second strike hard anti-crime campaign began in April 1996, focusing primarily on a nationwide gun control operation. In the months that followed, the military in Beijing provided real guns to all the guards, and the police also received bulletproof vests. There were frequent patrols of police cars in the streets to prevent another shooting. This extensive and constant surveillance made it impossible for White to strike again. He chose to wait quietly for an opportunity. During this time, White's younger sister-in-law introduced him to a woman named Xie Zongfen. From rural Sichuan, Xie is a year older than White. She is divorced and has 2 children. She runs a small business in Beijing and was looking for a man with Beijing residency. She was okay with White's past prison time. Xie was caring and attentive to White and took good care of him. They quickly confirmed their relationship and soon Xie moved in with White. White's mother was thrilled that he had found a girlfriend, and the whole family hoped that he would soon settle down and get married. However, after a few weeks of happy times, Xie began to notice White's bad temper. He often left the house for long periods without explanation, and even didn't come home for several days in a month. Xie began to feel that White was hiding something from her. White, who hadn't been home for a few days, was actually looking for a new target. Since he couldn't find an opportunity in Beijing, he remembered that there was a military barracks in Sushui, Baoding City, where he grew up. He noticed that the guards there carried Type 81 automatic rifles, which were better than his Type 56 semi-automatic rifle. He also studied the area around the barracks and planned an escape route. On July 24, 1996, 3 months after his last crime, White took a bus from Beijing to Sushui, a 2-hour drive carrying a rifle. He then buried the rifle in an orchard near the barracks and returned to Beijing. 2 days later, on July 26th, White made his 3rd trip to Sushui. He hid in the fields near the barracks, and, beginning in the afternoon, slowly approached his target. After several hours, he reached a spot in the grass about 10 meters from the guard, where he lay still for 4 hours, waiting for the right moment. At midnight, White pulled out his rifle and took aim like a sniper. At 1 a.m., he began firing continuously. 2 of the 3 guards on duty were killed instantly, while 1 was wounded and ran back to the barracks. White quickly rushed up, grabbed an .81 automatic rifle from the shoulder of a fallen guard, and fled the scene. The soldiers in the barracks immediately ran out of the gate, but no one found White. The army immediately organized a large number of soldiers to search the nearby streets, questioning passers-by and vehicles. After running for several hours, White arrived at an abandoned brick kiln. He buried 2 rifles and some bullets nearby, changed clothes, and took a short nap. At 8 a.m., he flagged down a long-distance bus heading back to Beijing. Shortly after boarding, the bus was stopped for inspection. White calmly asked the soldier what was going on, and the soldier informed him that their barracks had been robbed. After questioning each passenger and inspecting their belongings, the soldier found nothing unusual and allowed the bus to continue. White was able to return to his home in Beijing without any problems. On July 27th, Beijing police arrived at the Sushui barracks to collect more footprints and bullet casings. They soon discovered that the bullets had the same serial number, leading them to conclude that the same suspect was involved in the 3 shootings in Beijing. A special task force was set up to investigate the source and distribution of the bullets. After successfully carrying out his plan, White took some time to rest. He hadn't given up on getting a handgun, so he suggested to Z that they visit her hometown in Sichuan to meet her parents. Z cried and protested, not wanting to go back. White insisted and told her she had to listen to him. Z then confessed that she hadn't actually divorced her husband. Z explained that many married women from rural areas who moved to the city to do business claimed to be single to make life easier. After thinking it over, White told Z that he didn't care about her past and forgave her. At the same time, he revealed to her that he had recently stolen weapons. He wanted to see how Z would react. If she obeyed him, he could use her. If she wanted to leave, he would make her disappear. Facing the ruthless White, Z felt scared, but she still had feelings for him. She accepted. In early August 1996, the 2 arrived in Sichuan. A man told him to pay a deposit and wait 6 months to get a gun from Yunnan province. But White didn't believe him and returned to Beijing empty-handed. Upon his return to Beijing, White did not fully trust Z and was afraid that she might betray him. He dug a hole in the nearby mountain and prepared for the worst. One day, he took Z to a restaurant and then suggested they go hiking. Unsuspecting, Z went along, chatting and laughing with White. White had originally planned to get rid of Z on the mountain, but in the end, he couldn't bring himself to do it, and they went back home together. Later, White physically assaulted and threatened Z several times, effectively controlling her mentally. In early September 1996, White and Z went to Sushui to retrieve the Type 81 automatic rifle and ammunition, while rehiding another semi-automatic rifle. With the weapons in hand, White began scouting for robbery targets. Over the next few days, he and Z visited several wholesale markets in Beijing and Hebei, pretending to be interested in renting a shop to start a business. They asked the merchants about their daily sales and learned that they made less than 20,000 RMB per day, about $2,400. Unsatisfied with the amount, White decided to abandon the idea. At the same time, another daring criminal was arrested in Beijing for armed robbery of an armored car. All the banks in Beijing were also tightening security. This made White even more certain that he wouldn't rob a bank or an armored car. In early December, White found a tobacco market in Deshengmen, Beijing, where 2 businesses were making up to 500,000 RMB, about $60,000, a day. On December 16th, dressed in a dark overcoat and carrying a concealed rifle, White planned to rob one of the 2 shops. However, one of the businesses was closed that day. and the other, which normally dealt only in cash, had switched to accepting checks. This forced White to abandon his plan. At 12:20 p.m., as he was about to leave, he noticed another merchant nearby finishing a transaction and counting money. White then pulled a stocking over his head and rushed to grab the woman's bag. She resisted, and in response, White fired his gun, hitting the woman in the chest and taking the bag. As bystanders called for help, White fired several shots at passers-by, wounding 3 male employees of nearby businesses. White then fled to a nearby garbage dump and buried the money, the gun, and the stolen bag in various corners of the dump. He then calmly rode his bicycle to a nearby market, bought some wholesale socks, and returned home to give them to Z. 2 days later, White retrieved the money and gave it to Z. After counting, she found a total of 65,000 RMB, about $7,800. At first, Z said she wouldn't use the money because it was tainted with blood, but she ended up spending it. The police investigation revealed that the bullets used in this latest crime were the same type as those used in the previous 3 shootings and were identified as coming from a Type 81 automatic rifle, which matched the weapon robbed in Zushui. This led the police to conclude that the perpetrator's intention was not to retaliate against the military, but rather to obtain the weapon for the purpose of committing robberies. They also ruled out the possibility that the suspect was a retired military man. Police investigating the source of the bullets found that this type of ammunition was produced in the 1970s during the Cultural Revolution. It was mainly distributed to the Nanjing military region and the Lanzhou military region. The Nanjing military region confirmed that it had never distributed this batch of bullets. The Lanzhou military region, which is responsible for the northwestern region of China, stated that all of these bullets were sent to Xinjiang. The Special Task Force then traveled to Xinjiang to continue its investigation. They soon learned that the sheer quantity and wide distribution of the bullets, as well as the length of time they had been distributed, made tracing them very difficult. However, they discovered that in addition to the military, some local herders had access to this batch of bullets. After the successful robbery, White's desire for money grew even stronger, and he wanted to commit another crime. However, at that time, the Beijing police increased their presence, with patrols and security at every market. White didn't dare to do anything reckless. Soon, the 1997 Chinese New Year arrived, and White bought gifts for his family. The whole family finally celebrated the New Year together after such a very long time. From his return to Beijing on March 12, 1996, until the end of the year, White attacked the military 4 times, killing 3 guards, and robbed a market, resulting in 1 death, for a total of 4 deaths and 9 injuries. White was still far from the 3 million RMB he wanted. He thought of Xinjiang, where many people were involved in the cotton trade. He asked Z to lie to his mother and say they were going back to Z's hometown for a while. On February 21, 1997, White and Z boarded a train together to Xinjiang. The next episode will be even more thrilling, so stay tuned. Feel free to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments section. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed my video, please like it and subscribe to my channel.